kind of just strengthening those comments that I had made many months ago. But it's a Gluckstein designed condo, affordable housing under this. They're getting a 50-year amortization. I believe it's 0 or 1% interest rates on that construction money of $90 million. And they are having to use 30% of the median family income in the surrounding area. Now, what that includes in this instance along Preston is the Civic Hospital area and the Little Italy area, West Centertown. It's one of the highest average household incomes in Ottawa. And so the average unit, regardless of size, I believe it's 2,800 or 2,900 that they deems it as affordable housing in this case. Now,
you're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast with your hosts, Paul Stevenson, David Warren, and Greg Campbell. Let's see what's going on in the world of real estate today.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Good day. Hello. We are back, most of us. It is the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. My name is Paul Stevenson, and I am bleeding. Tried to rush getting on air and cut myself shaving for the first time in probably 20 years. Right on my lip. So perfect. So if you see me dabbing my face throughout the episode, that is why. Should be fun. Greg isn't with us today. I think Greg is recovering from a small illness, I believe. I don't want to speak on his behalf, but he said he wasn't going to make it. He's not feeling well. So we'll take that however we want. David, how was your weekend?
It was good. No complaints. Took it easy. Took it easy. Saturday did a little restaurant hop, which was fun. Mm-hmm. But other than that, nothing crazy.
I guess we should introduce ourselves.
I guess so. I guess that might help.
Yeah. So my name is Paul Stevenson. I'm a mortgage agent, and you can check out. I think I might write another article today, another blog. If you go to PaulStevenson.ca, you can check out all my blogs, my thoughts, pre-approvals, that sort of thing. Greg is a real estate agent and managing director at the Agency Ottawa. The Agency. He is not with us today. Dave Warren is a mortgage agent and owner at Referral Mortgages. And that's who we are. That's the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast. That's us. So Greg sent us a few stats. We'll touch on those. We had a really fun episode last week. We did our live show, which is always well received by listeners. And I think it pulls in some new listeners as well, because they feel like maybe, maybe more reachable, more, they could have their questions answered in real time. So that was a lot of fun, and it went well over probably about double the length that our normal episodes go. So, but really fun. It was good, interactive, lots of really good questions, and thank you for everyone who tuned in. And if you haven't seen it, you can always go back, obviously, on the YouTube channel. We did repost the live show afterwards. So you can go in there, and we basically just answered everyone's questions for an hour. So it was quite entertaining. I think we're going to try to do that once a month now, right? Once a month? Once every 6 weeks?
Let's not commit ourselves to anything here. We'll do a live show again at some point. Yeah.
If I don't bleed out before the end of the show, we'll keep going with these. So a couple questions that came on the show after the show was aired. So not live, but we can touch on those just so that everyone feels like, they're getting they're being heard. So, I just lost it there. So Sasha says, any thoughts on the Bank of Canada lagging behind the Fed for the latest round of increases? This could potentially lead to a lower loonie and further fuel inflation. What do you think about that, David?
Kind of even before the October announcement, I'd mentioned that that it was expected that by the end of Christmas, or by Christmas rather, over the October and December increase, that the aim was for 1%. The dates at which they announced any overnight rate change is preset for both the Bank of Canada and the Feds. I think what you're referring to, Sasha, is just the Bank of Canada deciding to raise 0.5%, whereas the Fed raised 0.75%. I think most and the market included was expecting a 0.75% from the Bank of Canada. However, I think with the inflation numbers coming out slightly lower than expected, that's why they decided the 0.5%. But I I believe it is kind of setting things up for another 0.5% increase in December. I'd be surprised if that wasn't the case. Again, it is our inflation numbers are trailing, so it usually takes 3 to 4 months for inflation, any Bank of Canada increase or Fed increase to change the market is usually a few months. So it takes a little bit. So it's not even anything that October's announcement we're going to even see, or that's going to play into the inflationary numbers right before the December announcement. So I think the market was surprised at that, but I think it's setting it up for, again, another 0.5% in December, but we'll see. Certainly the loonie has been getting absolutely slaughtered, against the US dollar, but so have most other markets. It's been pretty tumultuous in the currency realm, but the fuel inflation,
I would say,
I don't know, and I can't touch on that. I'd be speaking from a position of or a lack of information on that, so I won't even touch the fuel inflation.
Yeah, I have no idea either. I heard on the radio today that I think Doug Ford has there was something they were passing to reduce gas prices, I think,
it's just the tax. So they last year they brought in a tax cut on the provincial sales tax for fuel, which they had been in the last year, but Dougie's continuing that for the next year. So I guess doing what he can, but I think no matter what, the prices in fuel are likely here to stay for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot of demand in the electric vehicle market.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens on that side of things. I was just talking on the rates there quickly and rate increases. Like I'm, with clients right now choosing rates, I'm pretty much telling them, they're asking about fixed, variable, which direction they should go and so on, which I think we can touch on as well a bit further in the show. But, I'm pretty much telling everyone to expect, as you said, that kind of 0.5% increase in December. So really when I'm quoting them a rate, I'm basically saying, this is what it is today, but when you close, it's very likely going to be, whatever, basically 0.5% higher if they're taking variable. So just to kind of keep that in mind and for people to know, at least to have that expectation, so there's no surprises, because I think a lot of people maybe locked in a rate in July, closing in September, October, and were surprised when their rate was, a full % higher than what they, or 1.5% higher than what they thought they were going to get when they talked to their bank or their broker or whomever.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it kind of plays into Bicharon's question, but really, on that Bank of Canada and the Fed, that overnight rate, it is expected that it'll increase and then likely plateau for the foreseeable future after that, to let the inflationary numbers kind of catch up and to see if they continue to drive down. I think it's pretty evident that will be the case from conversations that we have, that as mortgage professionals to clients, and the pinch that they're undertaking, and just from the slowdown in the market, the kind of wealth across the board being wiped away, whether that's in equity in your home or in the equities market, like it's playing into all facets. So it is obviously accomplishing right now what the intent is, but I think to Bicharon's question of do you guys think the prime mortgage rate, once set by the Bank of Canada, will go under 3% in the next few years, seeing that we may very well be in a high inflation environment for quite a while due to labor and supply shortages? Everything I've been hearing is that, and reading, I should say, is that, rates will stay, the Bank of Canada overnight rate will increase, like I said, stay stagnant through next year and start to come down end of 2023, so Q4 and Q1 of 2024. Obviously, that's all based around inflation coming back down. I don't know whether they'll start lowering it prior to hitting that 2 to 3% target inflation rate, or whether they'll start to decrease it prior to. Again, it is lag. It is like I said before, it is kind of trailing data. They, even if they make a decrease today, it doesn't really have a ripple effect for a few months. So the same when it increases, it doesn't have that full effect for a few months. So I think it's possible that they start to decrease it, late next year, early 2024. So I think before that few years is up, with a target of 2.5% as the overnight rate, which would put prime in the high threes, which I think is kind of, really everyone says in the threes for fixed and variable is really kind of where that sweet spot is for the Canadian market, and where you kind of have that balanced market. So we saw that in 2019 and beginning of 2020, going into the pandemic, that prime was at 3.95 and fixed rates were in the 3.29 to 3.69. And I think that's, where their target will likely be coming out of this.
And you said that you had you were reading an article as well over the weekend regarding CMHC, right? And construction, like the money, I guess, on the construction loans.
Yeah. So, it's one that we've touched on before. The CMHC program, where they've allocated now, it's up to 25 billion allocated for the national housing strategy for building, affordable housing. And I really do use air quotes on that. They're saying that it's, they've allocated 13 billion in loans to the program, to build 38,000 units so far. But there's no transparency around it. So they're not saying what cities have been granted, what developers, there's only a couple that have. It's pretty opaque as far as what information they pass along, which is obviously getting a lot of heat, because it really makes no sense on why they wouldn't be advising as to what cities are getting are getting the builder money for these pseudo or supposed affordable housing units. Now, I use the air quotes of affordable housing because it is a joke as far as what the federal government is allocating or considering as an affordable unit. If you give me 1 second, I'm just going. Here we go. So the affordable. They've been frequently criticized over its affordability criteria. Under those rules, units are deemed affordable when they are rented for no more than 30% of median family income in the surrounding area. The calculation includes homeowners who earn more than renters on average, and any unit that rents for that price is considered affordable, no matter how big or small it is. Now, to give you an idea, and I mentioned this before, there is, this is obviously the Ottawa podcast. There is a building on Preston Street near where I am that received 90 million to build the Soho Italia, and it is falling under this CMHC program. I know I mentioned it before, but this article kind of is just strengthening those comments that I had made many months ago. But it's a Gluckstein designed condo, affordable housing under this. They're getting a 50-year amortization. I believe it's 0 or 1% interest rates on that construction money of 90 million. And they are having to use 30% of the median family income in the surrounding area. Now, what that includes in this instance along Preston is the Civic Hospital area and the Little Italy area, West Centertown. It's one of the highest average household incomes in Ottawa. And so the average unit, regardless of size, I believe it's 28 or 2,900 that they deems it as affordable housing in this case. Now, this kind of went to the further, the next paragraph's talking about the development in downtown Winnipeg, where they're able to charge $1,756 a month for an affordable bachelor unit. This is in Winnipeg, or 2.3 times higher than the average market rent for such a unit. So again, this is speaking to the failure of this program and their definition around affordable, and how ridiculous it is. So, all of us on this program, all of you listening, I'm sure agree we need more affordable housing, but to deem it under this qualification is absolutely ludicrous. Winnipeg, a bachelor of $1,756 a month, over double what the typical is for that unit, is crazy. I don't know why they haven't put more focus into this as far as adjusting it. But hopefully this Globe article kind of sheds more light on it and kind of brings it to the forefront to really, figure out what the heck's going on with it and why there's a lack of transparency and a lack of actual real meaningful dent in the affordable housing crisis, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Globe and Mail, you said?
Yeah. So we'll post the link. I know
there's
I know somebody continuously looks.
Steven,
for,
you mind making a note of the the time we talk about the article? We'll make sure to include the link. It's an interesting landscape right now. I found my conversations over the last week have really been focused around exactly that, like more outside of mortgages, like a lot of stuff about CMHC, about premiums, about interest rates themselves. Like clients are very well informed now, which is great. And the conversations I'm having are much more in depth than they were in years past. Like it feels like in the years past, it was kind of like, okay, what features are included in my mortgage? Can I make a prepayment and what's the rate? Those are kind of the main questions. Now I have people asking questions about like, what is the actual premium that CMHC is charging me? What is, what's the total amount of interest I'm paying on XYZ? Like it seems like people are way more knowledgeable and much more educated on mortgages themselves, just because it's been the focus for a couple of years now. And one of the things that I went into last week, I was talking to a kind of newer realtor, newer in the sense that was been licensed in the last 12 months, and just kind of breaking down the difference between rate kind of pillars, rate categories. So, insurable, insured, insurable, and uninsured. And, he was asking, what rate can we get for this client, right? For Jane Smith. And it was one of those things, well, it depends. And we see this to clients all the time, but, when we're dealing with over 30 different lenders and every lender has a matrix of 30 or 40 different rates, depending on, type of property, down payment, risk profile, location. Sometimes like there's a whole multitude of factors that go into a rate conversation. So with even just a single lender, there might be 30 different rates that they're offering. So when you have over 30 different lenders and they all have 30 different rates, you're basically starting. If someone asks you a question of rate, what rate can you offer me? We're essentially starting with over 900 different rate options. And we have to narrow that scope down based on the actual profile of the client. So at a very high level, I'll just explain this to everyone listening in case they don't know, but there's kind of three pockets of rates. And those rates those pockets, I guess, have different rates associated with them. So if you are to put less than a 20% down payment on your primary home, which obviously you can only do for your primary or secondary home, I guess. But if you put less than 20% down, then that's what's called insured. So it means it's insured by the CMHCs or Sagents of the world, and you pay an insurance premium. So because of that, the banks have little to no risk, basically no risk, because if you default on your mortgage, if you stop paying your mortgage, the bank gets all of their money back. So you're basically paying an insurance premium to protect the bank from default. And then, so because of that, because the bank basically is taking on no risk, they'll give you a preferred rate if you put less than 20% down, because they feel that it's a lesser risk for them as a lender. If you put more than 20% down, then you kind of fall into two buckets. There's the uninsured bucket, which means that, the mortgage will not be insured because, for whatever reason. It could be, the amount of debt you have. It could be your credit score. Is a multitude of different reasons. But your mortgage would be uninsured, which means that you're going to basically get a slightly higher rate, because even though they have a 20% buffer built into the equity, the lender still feels like, well, we don't have that insurance premium. We don't have that insurance on our back end for default. So if you stop paying your mortgage, we have to take back the home. We have to sell it. There's costs associated with that. So that's considered an uninsured mortgage. They're not insuring it on the back end. And then the last pocket is what they call insurable. So that means you're putting more than 20% down, but the bank itself is still able to insure that mortgage on their back end with CMHC or Sagent or whoever. So it's basically insurable. So based on your debt ratios and so on, they can still insure the mortgage on the back end, but that insurance isn't passed off to the client or anything like that. It's something that they do internally. There's the odd time that they do, charge a slight premium to the client, but very, very seldom. And I guess the thing to consider there is that the banks kind of have 3 tiers of rate offerings, but they also have 3 tiers of when you fall into those buckets. So less than 20% is typically going to be insured. Over 20%, usually up to about 35%, is going to be either insurable or uninsured. And then anything over a 35% down payment, you're kind of getting preferred rates again, because then the banks feel that they have enough of a buffer there in that 35%. That even if you default, they have lots of space there in the equity to sell the home and still be profitable. So typically, if you're putting more than 35% down, you're going to get the preferred rates again you would have got if you had an insured mortgage. So these are just kind of, again, it's a very high level explanation, and I'm sure I might have gone through that too quickly, but for the general public, someone who may have never had a mortgage before, just understanding all of these different rate offerings is important, because, you might have someone might be talking around the water cooler and someone's like, oh, well, I got, prime minus 0.9, and someone else might have only got, prime minus a half or something, and they can't understand, well, why is there such a discrepancy between these two rates? So not all rates are created equal. Not all mortgages are created equal. So really important, especially on our end, when we're talking to clients, is to understand, like, what is your plan? Where's the down payment coming from? What's the purpose with this property? And many other factors. So, when someone asks you what's the best rate you can offer, it really isn't that simple of a question. There are different kind of criteria that we have to work through to be able to properly and accurately quote you on a rate.
Right now, it's anywhere from high 4s to mid teens. Yeah. So, depends on what you're what you're looking for, what you qualify for, and what your objective is. So yeah, it's never to your point, it's never an easy answer, or as much as people think that it is. And a lot of it also, a lot of that change came from the Minister of Finance and changing what banks need to have on hand on the back end of what they could do with your mortgage on the back end, whether they can, package it together and sell your mortgage as what's called a mortgage-backed security, bundle it together and sell it on the market, or whether, for different buckets like uninsured, so refinances or rental purchases, 30-year amortizations, the bank has to have more cash on hand to service that. They're using their own book to lend that money as opposed to it being insured anywhere else. So there's a lot of factors that come into play, like Paul said, and they'll rank things. The better credit you have on an uninsured, the better a rate they'll give. So, to that point, there's, those, it's a great explanation, Paul, on those 3 buckets. And then beyond that, there's B lenders, mixed mortgage investment corporations. I know that there's, they've been in the news lately as well. But because of where the qualifying is for A banks, I've definitely seen a big, over the last while, a push more so into that alternative space for qualifying, because there are ways in which you can qualify based on the rate you're going to get. So instead of, with your TDs or Scotiabank, so yeah, that we certainly pushed with the change of market from qualifying. Typically it's at, with the TD, Scotia, RBC of your rate plus 2%. Some of these alternative lenders are able to qualify you at the rate you're going to get, or even, longer amortization. So 35 and 40-year amortizations. Some of these mortgage investment corporations or mix will allow you to make interest-only payments as well. So there are different options out there. Again, back to that rate question, it's a lot of what is your objective, and what are you looking at purchasing? What's your time horizon? Because it might play into that. An alternative lender on a 40-year amortization might make more sense than a TD at a 30-year, because maybe there's income we can't use to qualify you that's there, or family members that's there contributing to the mortgage, which we can't use that income to qualify. But you can then maybe you're able to afford a higher priced home. It's just the qualifying becomes a challenge, or your mortgage is up for renewal and you need to consolidate debt. And the only way of doing that is in the alternative space, because you can't qualify with an A lender. And I'm seeing that as well this past couple of weeks. But certainly, we've said it before, just have that candid conversation with a mortgage professional. You're having issues on renewal or refinance, because maybe it makes sense, even in today's higher rate environment, to consolidate debt, because maybe you have a lot of credit card debt, things like that, where, obviously it's a pinch with affordability and and groceries and all that maybe you've been having to use your credit card more than planned, it still might make sense to use some of that equity. But have that conversation. If you get kickback from, maybe your bank, you went in there and they said there's nothing they can do, speak to a mortgage professional. There's a lot more options on the table and out there. So don't feel like you're stuck just because one institution said they can't help you.
Yeah, it's been interesting too, hearing from alternative, like clients that are dealing with alternative lenders, how pleased they are with the rate they're getting, because we've seen the delta, I guess, between like a regular A bank and the alternative lenders get much smaller. Now the alternative lenders are obviously starting to increase their rates now, but fixed rates were almost at high fives, and there was still some B lenders offering 6.99 at one point and low sevens. So you're talking a 1% difference for what would normally be a 3 or 4 point spread. So it was interesting to hear some clients were very pleasantly surprised in that alternative space when they were getting the rates that they did, because they knew that even on their primary home, the rates they were getting would have been much higher. So it's been an interesting year for sure when it comes to rates. And I've never, I've tried as hard as I can in my career to steer away the conversation from rates, because, it's always been one of those things where, and I still don't think it's the most important, but it's not the most important thing, but now it's just so prevalent and such a topic of conversation everywhere. And, the Bank of Canada announcements have been front page on every newspaper. Like, it's something that is every month and a half, or, every time there's an announcement coming out, that it's the topic of conversation for everyone. So it's certainly been hyper focused for us too. People have been asking every conversation, where rates, what rate am I getting? What's happening with my rate? I just had a client who just moved out east not too long ago, and exactly what you said, Dave. One of the partners basically got into an accident, hasn't been able to work, so they've been using unsecured debt for a little while. So now they're having to downsize, coming back to Ottawa. We're hoping to port the mortgage, but actually no longer qualify because of that loss of income. So now we're having to look at some alternatives to get them into the new home back here in Ottawa. And everyone's situation is different. These things happen. I mean, life happens. And I mean, that's one of the benefits of being a broker on our side, is that we do have different types of lenders. So it really is a one-stop shop. If one lender won't do it, we have other alternatives that we can turn to find solutions. So it's that I would say that's one of the more fulfilling sides of the job, is when clients think they have no solution, there's no hope, and then we're able to provide them something that they didn't even know existed. It's always get positive feedback from those conversations.
Yeah, well, that's great. Should we? I think we probably talked enough about rates. Maybe we should slide into some mood boosts.
Yeah, mood boost. And Greg threw out some stats for me this morning before he went offline. So he said some stats for the suburbs. Average days on market for sale in the last 7 days is 50. So I think that's up from 45. And the average price of townhomes in Ottawa is down about 100,000 since March, he said, which is pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Townhomes is probably it's probably because it's the one thing they're actually building right now. All the new builds, a lot of them are townhomes, right? Like row homes.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that wasn't condo townhomes. That was just townhomes in general. So I think that might be. I mean, there's an abundance of townhomes that have been built this year.
We'll have them clarify next week. We'll get them to come with the.
We'll get them to show up
proper
next week.
Stats matrix.
Yeah. I think my bleeding has finally stopped as well. So have mercy.
Nice.
I appreciate everyone's patience as I dab my lip the whole show. Hideous. Okay, so I'll go with 3 today. Number 1, why did the lion eat the tightrope walker? He wanted a well-balanced meal.
Wow.
Wanted a well-balanced meal. Number 2, what's another name for a sleeping bag? A knapsack. It's not bad. I'm surprised I've never heard that one before. Number 3, thinking about removing my spine. I feel like it's only holding me back.
Wow.
the next one's worse. So I'm just going to leave it there. And I'll come with some fire next week. My brother's been slacking a bit on the mood boost. I don't think I've gotten mood boost from him since end of October. So I'm using
Tim, get with it.
Using the calendar, I'll shake him today. Give him a good shake. Thanks to everyone as well for listening. Still. Appreciate everyone who tuned in last week and contributed to the live show. And we'll definitely be doing that again in the coming months, probably sometime in December, maybe before the holidays. We'll do a little holiday fiesta before we take a couple weeks off, if we take a couple weeks off. And thanks as always to Steve Hopkins, our amazing producer. And thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. Deuces. See you.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please
Different
remember
energy when
to
Greg's
like,
on here, right?
share, comment, and subscribe because we'd really like that.